Good afternoon, and thank you for coming to this roundtable. First of all, let me introduce. I am Ana Polanco, and I am the Market Access and Corporate Affairs Director for Merck. I am also a member of the board of ASEBIO, the organizer of BIOSPAIN, and I am leading the Health Commission. Before starting, I want to apologize to Begoña Barragan. She should have been here today with us, but due to a conflict and a personal problem, she's not going to be this afternoon. So we are going to have Luis and Jorge. I will introduce immediately afterwards. But the beauty of that is that we are going to have more time to raise questions to them. So in these 2 days, we have been already celebrating this 9th edition of BIOSPAIN. Various topics have been addressed related to biotechnology in general. And in particular, we have discussed how all of us from our specific areas for action can contribute to the development of new technologies and services to provide solutions to the problems that we are facing as citizens and society. So in this roundtable, we are going to explore more in depth some national initiatives who are necessary to contribute to the development of the new therapies in the field of oncology, which is the topic of today, because our goal is to facilitate the access for patients with cancer to innovative therapies. So before introducing our speakers, let me give you a few words about my company and how we are working in oncology. Immunology, oncology and immuno-oncology are the main pipeline of Merck. We are working now with 8 molecules in proprietary research in the area of oncology and 5 in the area of immuno-oncology. As an example, in the case of Spain, we participate in 50 clinical trials. 28 of them have been conducted in the area of oncology and immuno-oncology. And last year, we invested in our country around 12 million euros on R&D, which represents 13% of increase over the previous year. I want also to highlight the fact that we have also agreements with the universities, and recently we have signed a chair in immunology with the Francisco de Vitoria University on immunology, an area you know that has a growing impact not only on neurology but also on the area of oncology. And with this chair, we have 3 lines of actions: translation research in immunology, the design and development of undergraduate and postgraduate programs, and the transfer of dissemination of knowledge. So these are 2 fast examples of how from the pharma industry we can work and contribute to facilitate the innovations, taking real impact on the patient's life. But when we talk about innovation in any field, and in oncology in particular, we have to think that the last link of the chain is the patients. And our goal is that all this innovation reaches the patients in condition of equity. In this sense, I am sure that all of us, I mean regulatory agencies, governments, clinicians, patient organizations, and the pharma industry, of course, we share the same purpose, that provide the patients with these solutions so they can have longer and better lives. Data, according to the World Health Organization, in the report Access to New Medicines Europe, oncology is one of the non-communicable disease areas where innovation is extremely positive from a patient perspective. But the introduction of the innovation in this area is in some way putting pressure over the national health systems. And here it's important to take into account the prevalence of the oncology. I mean, it is estimated, Luis then he will give us more data, but there are 40 million people across the globe diagnosed with cancer every year. So this is going to be the topic of the roundtable. how can we balance access to innovation, sustainability, and equity. And to describe this current situation, we have invited Dr. Jorge Alboal, General Director of the Galician Health Service, and Dr. Luis de la Cruz Merino, Head of the Clinical Oncology Department at the Virgen de la Macarena University Hospital. And I am sure that during their presentation you are going to have comments or questions, so we have plenty of time, I hope, so you can raise that questions to them at the end of the session. So without further delay, we will begin with Jorge. Just a few words of his CV. Jorge holds a Bachelor of Medicine and Surgery from the Autonomous University of Madrid. In addition, he has a PhD from the University of Santiago de Compostela and a diploma in Upper Hospital Management from the Galician School of Health Administration, and he is acknowledged as an admission and clinical documentation expert by the Complutense University of Madrid. During the next minutes, he is going to talk about innovation and access to medicines in oncology in the Galician Health Service. Jorge, whenever you want.
Good afternoon. First of all, I want to thank to the organizing committee of this session for the kind invitation to participate in it. I also want to thank the sponsor of this event, and of course, thank all those who remain seated for the next 10 minutes. Well, as Anna said, I am Jorge Well, the Healthcare General Director of the Galician Health Service. For those who don't remember it, Galicia is located in the northwest of the Iberian Peninsula. We have a population of 2,700,000 inhabitants and an area of almost 30,000 square kilometers. Each of both parameters represent the 6% with respect to Spain. Galicia is a region of great beauty, as can be seen in its people and in landscapes. But from the healthcare point of view, we have two main characteristics that condition the planning and management of the healthcare resources. The first one is the population in Galicia is very geographically dispersed. You can see on this map, each blue dot corresponds to 100 inhabitants. And the second one is the population pyramid of Galicia. More than a pyramid, it looks like a Roman bus. The percentage of people over 65 years old in Galicia is very close to 25%, observing a level higher than 30% in the province of Orense. We currently have more people over the 85 than people under the age 5. As age advances, the use of health resources is greater. I do not mention this as something negative. I think it's really good to have these older people in our society. So we must plan and manage our healthcare resources, knowing that the geographic dispersion and longevity shape our decisions. The Galician Public Health Service has 14 hospitals, 469 healthcare in primary care, and 91 points of attention to out-of-hospital hospital emergencies, with more or less 37,000 healthcare professionals. In this slide shows the Galician health service activity in a year. In summary, more than 150 activities per day are carried out by our healthcare professionals. The financial budget for health in our autonomous community is 3,883 million euros for this year. That represents about the 42% of the total autonomic budget. And this is the distribution of the healthcare budget. 3 large blocks: human resources, medication, and everything else. The human resources part is quite stable and manageable. The part that I call everything else is also stable, and above all depends on the activity carried on and the electromedical technologies. But the part related to medication is very unstable. The approximately 1,000 million euros, the 37% corresponds to hospital pharmacy, and the remaining 63% correspond to non-hospital pharmacy. And please see these graphs. The non-hospital pharmacy spending has returned to the same level as 6 years ago. But on the left, the hospital pharmacy spending has a very exponential upward trend. This point peak corresponds to the treatment of hepatitis C in the year of 2015. The increase of the hospital pharmacy spending corresponds mainly to these groups of therapies: oncology, biology, hematology, and rare disease. As can be seen, the group that increased the most are the oncology therapies. In this decade, we have experienced the introduction into the market of around 500 innovative molecules or combinations for cancer treatment. And this is the authorizations and procedures scheme that a new drug has to go through until it's normal and daily prescription by a doctor. But in Galicia, any doctor at any moment of this path could prescribe any new medicine with more or less bureaucratic requirements, but all the therapeutic innovation is accessible at all times. Is this sustainable? To guarantee the access to the new medicines, we must avoid both of these scenarios. We cannot allow this access to new medicines to lead to an increase in the medication budgets, reducing any of the other budget blocks. And we cannot allow this access to the new medicine to lead to an increase in total healthcare budget, reducing any budgets of the other departments of the autonomous government of Galicia. We should not waste time thinking about problems. We should think about solutions. We must look for new paths. always thinking about things that add value, of course, using big data. And in my opinion, this may be one of the ways to go, risk-sharing agreements between health service and pharmaceutical industry. It involves a profound change in the negotiation. Stop talking about price or discounts and start talking about progression of disease or survival. That is to say, medication effectiveness and results in the real world. To conclude, establish agreement, monitor results, share risks, our proposal to move towards sustainability of our health systems. And that's all. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Jorge. And now is the time for Luis de la Cruz Merino. Luis has been head of the Clinical Oncology Department at the Virgen de la Macarena University Hospital since April 2017. He is author and co-author of more than 50 publications in journals such as New England Journal of Medicine, Lancet, Lancet Oncology, Annals of Oncology, and others. His main area of research interest is immunotherapy of cancer, especially applied to melanoma, lymphoma, and breast cancer. And in his presentation, Luis is going to share with us the situation regarding access to cancer medicines from the point of view of the clinician practice. This is a matter, in fact, that has spurred great efforts from different institutions and scientific societies, such as the Spanish Society of Medical Oncology. Thank you, Luis.
Thank you so much. I want to thank also the kind invitation for the organizing committee of this Congress. And it is quite interesting for me as head of a clinical oncology department to discuss this topic, because it is quite important for all of us to maintain the sustainability of the healthcare system. And we are very conscious about our impact on the budget of the hospitals with our drugs, with the new drugs that are coming in the field of oncology. And this is a matter of that concerns all of us, not just the clinicians, not that the patients. This has to be with the whole society. I think we all share the same great challenges in the next future with these new drugs. As all of us, we are potential patients in the future, and this is quite important for the whole society. And it is important to know what is happening in the field of oncology, and as you can see here in this slide, we are the specialty that has the most important growth of drugs and with the highest impact in the budget of the hospitals and the healthcare systems. You can see here, which is very important, and it's a very increasing trend in the last few years with the new drugs related with immunotherapy, targeted therapies that are coming with very good results in the clinical setting. In the last few years, from our society, the Spanish Medical Oncology Society, we did a work regarding which was the access to the new drugs in oncology in the different regions in Spain. And there was a quite high variability with respect to the drugs and the regions. And this is not, these are not good news for all of us here in Spain. There's a very important variability with respect to the access of the drugs. At least this was one of the conclusions of this work that was published in 2016. However, it is important to criticize also this document, and we have to focus on the value of the drugs, the real clinical value of the drugs, and not just rely on the positive trials with respect to the with the statistical significance, but just it is much more important what is the value that add that drug in the clinical setting. So the most important thing is to know that we need to delivery of fair prices and real value from the new technologies. These are two very important things. The real value, we have to measure what is the impact, the clinical real impact of the innovation in our patients, and also the fair prices. The price is quite high for most of the drugs that are coming into the market in the last few years in oncology. So these are two very important things that we have to put and to discuss in the next few years. Maybe the crisis, with respect to the crisis in the cost in the healthcare systems, we have to rethink and to accurately measure cost and compare them with the outcomes, the clinical outcomes. As Jorge said before, this is the most important thing, because if one drug is very expensive, if it has a very good result in a patient, this is a very good value, and maybe it's worth the effort to pay that drug. The European Society of Medical Oncology has an intent to sustainability the healthcare systems of the countries in Europe, and this is one of our main efforts in the next few years. This is the Pillar 3 of the 2020 vision of the ESMO Society, and one of the most important initiatives of our society is the ESMO magnitude of clinical benefit scale. This is a very important initiative because it relies in the importance of to see what is the real value of all the drugs that are entering into the market. And it relies in the value of any new treatment is determined by the magnitude of its clinical benefits balanced against its cost, which is quite important, and it is in the opposite of just rely on the statistically significant results that we can have in a clinical trial, that we can see in a clinical trial. It is much more important to see what is the clinical benefit of the results of these new drugs. So this clinical guideline supports their therapeutic recommendations, grading the level of evidence known by the magnitude of the benefit, and it is much more important for all of us as clinicians and for the patients and for the society to see the magnitude of the clinical benefit of the innovations that we are looking for in these clinical trials. These are the main goals of the magnitude of clinical benefit of this initiative: to present clear and unbiased statements regarding the magnitude of clinical benefit from new therapeutic approaches supported by credible research, and clinical benefit refers to the added benefit compared with the best current standard of care. So now, with this approach, we try to see which is the real value and the clinical outcomes of these new drugs in different contexts, in the adjuvant context and the metastatic setting. So there is no a global or just a standard rule for all of these new drugs, but we have to first to decide if we are trying to look for a curative proposal or non-curative drug or treatment, and the level of magnitude of clinical benefit is different with respect to these two approaches and to these two scopes, which are quite different. So the usefulness of the data generated by these scales are the reduced likelihood of overestimation or underestimation of benefits. Just to rely on the results of a clinical trial with the statistical results is not enough. to public policy applications, which is very important for the society, formulations of clinical guidelines, improvement of clinical trial design, the clinical decision making, which is very important for us as clinicians, and the editorial decisions and commentaries. I think, just to conclude and to sum up my speech, that modern drugs in oncology constitutes the highest economical burden in developed countries, as we all have seen. The initiatives to guarantee sustainability of the health systems are necessary for the society, and the new approaches based on fair prices and real clinical value must be implemented in order to incorporate truly valuable innovations in our healthcare systems. Thank you so much. This is an effort that we have to put into contest, and I think that all the society is involved in this scope. Thank you so much.
So thank you so much, Luis. I think you both have raised the basis for the discussion. So now it's time for the audience. So you have the opportunity, you have questions, comments. We open the debate.
So I have two questions. One is relative to many of these new therapeutics require a diagnostic, a companion diagnostic, or some type of diagnostic associated with it. And where does that fall in this whole scheme of costs? And how are you dealing with that? Because some of these diagnostics have very high costs. And the second is the scheme that you just showed for evaluation. Is that within, outside of the health technology assessment process?
Diagnosis and the diagnostic procedures, they are quite important in order to be accurate in the type of treatment that you want to use. If you have higher accuracy with these diagnostic tests, maybe they are worthy and they have to be implemented, and, although they are very expensive at some point. But if you can be more accurate with these diagnostic tests, I think they have to be implemented in the clinical practice. The second question, I don't... Yeah.
Technology assessments, or is this
Yeah. It relies on diagnostic assessment, radiological assessment, progression-free survival, disease-free survival, overall survival, overall response rates. And we need the diagnostic assessment, mainly CT or type of diagnostic test, and we use the usual oncological assessment.
I'm referring to the health technology assessment for reimbursement of new medicines coming into the market.
Yeah, I think that they have to be included with this schema and with this magnitude of benefit scale. They have to be included also, in this field.
Hi, I have two questions. One would be regarding the risk-sharing agreements that you mentioned. I was wondering if there are any at all that are having already implemented in your region. And the other question, also related to HTA, would be if both of you agree that it should be taken to the European level instead of doing at the European level, then nationally, and then by every independent autonomous region or hospital, as it happens sometimes. Would you support harmonized HTA?
Well, yes. About the risk sharing agreement, we are working now with 2 companies in this type of the negotiation, and we must work over the new law, new contract law, and this is different and a bit difficult, but we are in a few days, I think, we have the first risk sharing agreement.
Your question was related to the evaluation. I think the evaluation must be European, at the European level. The evaluation just region by region here in Spain, I think it has no sense. It's my opinion. At least the Spanish level or national level, but it would be better at the European level. It's my opinion.
Just a comment or a question relating to the risk-sharing agreements, and it's a question also for Jorge and Luis. Don't you think that in order to implement better risk-sharing agreements based on outcomes, we need common registries at national level? Or what can you do? What should you do better in terms of have them? Are you working from the Spanish Society of Oncology from a regional level?
Well, I think the risk-sharing agreement, I don't agree with make an specific record or registry. I think that we must use our big data and work with data of the real world, knowing the progression, knowing the actual the treatment, all things about the patient.
Well, for me, it is also obvious that a common registry would be the best option, but it's very difficult to have one, at least here in Spain, because we have 17 regions, and every region has its healthcare system, and it has every one an electronic, different history of the patient and system, and they are systems that are not related or linked between communities, between regions. And so this is very difficult to solve this question and harmonize, yeah. But it would be very important, at least for the oncological field and patients. For oncology, we all share the same challenges in, I don't know, the different type of tumors. And all the oncologists, we measure the same things, the disease-free survival, the response of a drug or something. But the way in which these data are recorded are different in every region. So this is a weakness of our healthcare system that is very good in general terms. Our healthcare system, public healthcare system, but it has some difficulties related to this.
I have a question for Jorge Aboal. You said it's very important to work with the industry and to work with all the stakeholders from the system. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about how you do it in Galicia. And then I wanted to have another question for Luis de la Cruz, which would be related to patients. How do you see patients can be involved in this new way of trying to understand what adds value to the system? Thank you.
Okay. We need, from the public administration, collaborate with the pharmaceutical industry, and we think always of the win of the pharmaceutical industry, and the pharmaceutical industry must think about the win of the administration, because I think that in a negotiation we have work about the mutual win for they, win for us, and I think this is the way.
With respect to the patients, I think there are several actors here. The industry, the clinicians, the healthcare system, the patients. The patients need to be optimally treated. They need to be treated as the clinicians want to do, with respect to the clinical evidence that we have at every moment. But there are some great difficulties related to the way in which the drugs are approved and enter into the market. At some point, they can last several months or years after a clinical trial has finished and has released the results in a congress or in a paper, and then it has to pass all the path related to the approval of the drugs. And maybe there are patients that need these treatments. This is a difficult thing that we have to solve quickly. But they have to be also conscious that the patients that they have to know that it is difficult also for the society in general to include these drugs and into the market very quickly, because we have these difficulties. However, it is quite important in all the cases that we as clinicians and the healthcare system to be conscious about these difficulties and try to solve all of them.
Luis, I have another question. You have mentioned before a little bit about the study made by published by the SEOM 3 years ago about the situation of access to oncology treatments to Spanish patients, and where you demonstrated that there are inequities among the different regions. Do you think that the situation has changed 3 years afterwards? And do you plan, perhaps you can't answer that question, but do you know if there is some plan to analyze again and to see the radiography right now?
It was a very important effort to have the picture of the access in all the country. We noticed about some disparities in the access of some drugs. I have no data in the last 2 years. We wanted to know what's happening, but my feeling is that things has gone better. Because with the last new drugs, for example, immunotherapy, the modern immunotherapy, the access here in Spain has been very open to all the regions and very quick the access to the market. But this is just a feeling, and I don't have the real data with respect to this.
If someone from the audience wants to comment on that topic? Otherwise, thinking in the future, question again, just my last question, Luis. 15, perhaps nothing to do with that, but 15 years ago, the first cancer plan came to light, and well, since then we have seen many advances on oncology. In fact, the data from survival are amazing. We are talking about more than 50. And I think that in these 15 years, we have seen innovations coming to the market that have changed the scape and the hope of the patients. And I am talking about personalized medicine, immunology, etc. So, do you think that we need to update this plan, to think in another plan? What do you think that you should consider? Because we have mentioned the role of the patients. We are talking about access, genomic. So perhaps there are topics that should be included. I don't know, perhaps both of you can comment on that.
Well, first of all, in 15 years, oncology has changed a lot, fortunately, for all of us. For us as clinicians, for the patients, for the society, has changed and things have improved so much. But it is obvious that now we need another plan, or we need to plan what's going to be the future in oncology in the next few years. We need the support of the society in general. And I think that it's very important that the industry to be conscious about the relevancy of its role. And one of the things that Jorge told about the results or the pay by results or something like that, this is very important that the industry has to enter into this, because we have to change the way in which the drugs come into the market, and well, it doesn't matter the result that they achieve. This is not the way to do the things, I think, right now. So they are very important, the diagnostic tools. I think this is very important, the biomarkers for oncology. It's very important to have clinical boards, diagnostic boards. Oncology has expanded, and we need much more people working on this, not just clinical oncologists or radiotherapy oncologists, but we need much more people, pathologists, basic researchers, and this is the way to manage the cancer in the future. So we have to rethink in another plan in the future, for sure.
And talking about new feature, I think that the patients should have more information about their health problems and should have an active participation in clinical decisions. I think this is a next change about oncology.
And it's a pity that Begoña is not with us, because I'm sure that she will agree on that. So any more questions from the audience? If not, I think that, well, we give 10 minutes to go to the next roundtable. So thank you very much, Jorge and Luis, for being with us, and thank you very much, all of you, for being here and also for your participation.